My husband got me a vacuum for my 50th. My husband Tom isn't known for his gift-giving skills. Last Christmas, he got me car floor mats. For my birthday 2 years ago, a bathroom scale. So when he handed me this huge box with a ribbon on it, I was honestly bracing myself for a leaf blower or maybe a toilet plunger. But when I opened it up and saw this fancy red vacuum with all the attachments, I thought maybe he finally listened to me complaining about our old piece of junk that barely picked up cat hair. I even smiled and gave him a kiss, thinking this might be his way of saying he noticed how hard I work to keep our house clean. That's when he dropped the bomb. My husband got me a vacuum for my 50th. I'm standing in my kitchen staring at this giant box with a bow on it, wondering if this is his idea of a joke. Like, I'm not sure what hurt more, the fact that he thought this was an appropriate gift, or that he seemed genuinely excited about it. He's standing there with this big smile waiting for me to be grateful, and I'm just trying not to cry. For context, this man has never bought me a vacuum in 26 years of marriage. We've always just used the same crappy one from when we got married that sounds like a jet engine and barely picks up anything. So when he said he had a special surprise for my birthday, I was thinking jewelry, a weekend trip, hell, even a nice dinner out, but no, a Dyson. The worst part is he kept saying how practical it was. You're always complaining about how the old one doesn't work, honey. Now you can clean the carpets properly. Like, dude, if you cared about clean carpets, maybe you could have picked up a vacuum yourself sometime in the last decade, instead of leaving every crumb on the floor for me to deal with. But here's where it gets worse. My sister calls me later that day to see how my birthday went, and when I tell her about the vacuum, she goes quiet. Then she tells me that her husband's been acting weird lately too, buying her cleaning supplies and talking about how she needs to take better care of the house. Turns out his mom had been filling his head with garbage about how wives these days don't appreciate practical gifts, so I decided to get practical too. The next morning, I left that vacuum right in the middle of the living room and went to Target. Bought him a toilet brush, some bleach, and a pair of rubber gloves. Wrapped them up real nice with a bow and everything. When he got home from work, I handed him his PE. I figured since you're home all day now, you could really get the carpets looking nice, he said, not even looking up from his phone. My mom always kept a spotless house when she was your age. I stopped smiling real quick. For context, I've been home all day for exactly 3 weeks since getting laid off from my job of 15 years. And his precious mom? She had a cleaning lady twice a week and never worked a day in her life, but it gets worse, way worse. Later that night, I overheard him on the phone with his buddy Steve laughing about how I actually seemed happy about the vacuum. He said, and I quote, "Women are so easy to please when you get them practical stuff they'll actually use." That's when I realized this wasn't a gift. This was a job assignment wrapped in pretty paper. So the next morning, while Tom was at work, I drove that beautiful red vacuum straight to the pawn shop and got $200 for it. Then I went to the nail salon, got a full set, treated myself to lunch at that expensive place downtown, and bought myself a silk scarf I'd been eyeing for months. When Tom came home and asked where the vacuum was, I told him I returned it because the suction wasn't strong enough. He got all confused and asked what I was going to use to clean the carpets. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "The same thing I used before you decided my unemployment was your personal housekeeping opportunity." My hands and knees, apparently. He started getting all huffy about how expensive that vacuum was and how ungrateful I was being. So I pulled out my phone and played him the recording of his conversation with Steve that I'd definitely not been secretly saving. His face went completely white. He tried to stammer out some excuse about how I misunderstood, but I cut him off. "You know what would make a great 51st birthday gift?" I said. "A marriage counselor. Because if you think your newly unemployed wife is your personal maid service, we've got bigger problems than dirty carpets." He actually scheduled us an appointment the next day.